Everyone knows someone who's breaking inside but still smiles in every photo. Someone who looks perfectly fine on the outside, working, chatting, laughing, but secretly counts the minutes until the day ends. People who seem to have everything lined up, a stable job, some money, maybe even a home, yet behind those closed doors, they feel empty, crushed by a quiet pain that no one else sees. And if you're honest, maybe that someone is you. Here's the truth most people run from. Life, for the majority of us, is not some grand adventure. It's a long chain of disappointments, meaningless obligations, and tiny doses of suffering, neatly packed inside routines that repeat like broken machinery. You wake up early to work, spend hours stuck in traffic, swallow a rushed lunch, deal with your boss's mood swings, angry clients, unpaid bills, and by the time you get home, you're too exhausted to do anything. The best you can hope for is an episode of some show you don't even care about anymore, just enough to trick your brain into thinking you're resting. Deep down, you feel it. Something is deeply wrong with how life is. But here's the gut punch. It's not a mistake. This is the system. This is the pattern. This is what life is for most. Arthur Schopenhauer once said that life is a chain of endless needs and that suffering is the natural state of humanity. The Romanian philosopher Emil Cioran called life a repeated catastrophe. And Jiddu Krishnamurti went even further. To be well adjusted to a sick society, he said, is itself a form of insanity. Now, before you start throwing in comforting phrases, life has its ups and downs, or it's all about perspective, stop. Take a breath. This isn't a self-help speech. We're not here to patch your wounds with empty optimism. We're here to face something brutal. That maybe life really is a mess, and its only guaranteed ending is death. But we're not just here to shock you. We're here to go deep, to explore the rawest, most uncomfortable truths about the human condition through the eyes of some of the most brutally honest thinkers who ever lived. Because you can try to escape suffering, you can try to ignore death, you can pretend everything's fine, but eventually, the truth catches up. And in this journey, you'll start to understand why they were right, that to live is to carry a ridiculous burden, and maybe recognizing that is the first real step towards something that feels true. So here we go. You've entered the rabbit hole. No turning back now. Let's start with the most basic human experience, desire. Have you ever noticed that the very moment you want something is the moment you start to suffer? Before the desire, there's emptiness. After it, frustration. Frustration for not having it, frustration for getting it but wanting more, or the emptiness of realizing that what you wanted didn't mean anything after all. Schopenhauer called this the slavery of the will, and he didn't use the word slavery lightly. To him, will was not a noble concept. It wasn't about determination or purpose. It was an irrational, blind, and never-ending force that drives everything, from cells to civilizations. Life, he said, is not guided by reason, but by lack, by constant craving. The will wants, and while it keeps wanting, you suffer. Modern society does everything it can to hide this truth. It sells you goals, dreams, affirmations, and slogans. Follow your passion, manifest abundance, believe in yourself. But here's what they never tell you. Every dream, once achieved, becomes another prison. You buy a car, soon you want a better one. You fall in love and then miss the freedom you gave up. You get the job and start craving escape. The will never stops. It rents your soul, and the rent is never paid off. Schopenhauer wrote, "Human life must be some kind of mistake. The proof lies in its very existence." He wasn't a bitter old man shaking his fist at the sky. He was simply clear, painfully clear, about something we all feel, but rarely admit. To live is to swing endlessly between desire and boredom. And boredom for him wasn't just having nothing to do. It was the silent scream of existence itself, the awareness of emptiness when there's no desire left to distract you. In boredom, you meet the naked truth that life, by itself, doesn't mean anything. He described boredom as the pause that reveals the absurdity of life. Between pain and boredom, Existence swings like a pendulum, never finding peace on either side. Think about how we live. We work not because we love to, but because we're terrified of being broke. We chase pleasures that fade in minutes. We fill every gap in time with noise, screens, conversations, and meaningless tasks. Anything to avoid looking inward and seeing the nothing there. Human existence boils down to this: filling the void with distractions and calling that living. And don't think faith, progress, or human goodness can save you. Those are just sentimental soundtracks playing over the same silent movie. The truth doesn't change. Life offers no guarantees, no justice, and no meaning. Facing that isn't nihilism, it's philosophical maturity. Optimism, on the other hand, is a childish refusal to look reality in the eye. And science, ironically, doesn't save us either. It only confirms what the pessimists already knew. Modern neuroscience shows that the human brain is wired to desire, not to be satisfied. Our dopamine system is a biological trap. The more you get, the more you need. We are quite literally built for dissatisfaction. Optimism says, this too shall pass. Schopenhauer answers, no, it'll just come back worse. But that's not a message of despair. It's a call for clarity. Because only when you understand the true nature of suffering can you finally stop chasing what can't be reached. In this light, pessimism isn't the enemy of life. It's the cure for self-deception. It doesn't destroy life. It strips away the cheap paint covering it so you can finally see it for what it really is. You want to stop suffering? Then stop believing that life owes you happiness. Stop expecting it to be something it's not. Only when we drop that illusion can we finally look at life with honesty. And in that honesty, that first breath of brutal truth, sanity begins.
The greatest trauma of your life happened before you even took your first breath. Nobody asked for your permission. You were thrown into existence without choice, without consent, without a manual. Birth is celebrated as a miracle. People cry, take pictures, say congratulations, but no one mentions the invisible weight placed into your tiny hands the moment you arrive. The burden of existing, the burden of knowing sooner or later you will suffer, you will age, and you will die. Between these points, you'll spend your time trying to make sense of a chaos that refuses to answer. Emil Cioran wrote, "One does not begin life by choosing between being and not being." That sentence should be written in hospitals, not cheesy posters about new beginnings. Cioran wasn't preaching suicide or destruction, he was exposing a wound, writing as someone bleeding in slow motion. For him, consciousness was a curse evolution forgot to take back. Only humans know they will die. Only humans build religions, ideologies, and distractions to endure that knowledge. Everything from rituals to social media is a way to forget the absurd truth: we were born without reason. Cioran said the greatest tragedy isn't death, it's birth. Because after you are born, everything that follows is just a long fall. You're born and immediately you feel hunger, cold, fear. You grow up and discover boredom, failure, loneliness. You work to live and live tired. You love and get betrayed. You trust and get disappointed. You grow old, get sick, and then you die. That's the story, every time. We're all statistics pretending to be special. Try refuting that with motivational quotes. You can't. Cioran spoke about what no one can erase: the pain of existing without a clear purpose, without a reliable direction, without lasting relief. He was one of the few brave enough to say that not asking to be born is by itself an ethical argument against life. And this isn't melodrama, it's logic. Suffering is certain, pleasure is an interval. What kind of miracle is that? In one of his most striking lines, Cioran wrote, "The fact that I exist proves the world has no meaning. The existence of a being capable of thinking that thought is itself an accusation against the universe." And when people respond with, "But life has beauty," Cioran would give another blow. Even joy is complicit in tragedy, because beauty fades, happiness evaporates. What's lovely decays. What's intense turns into memory. Even love that swears eternity ends up crushed by routine or death. You've seen it. A child starving in Gaza, an old man forgotten in a care home, a young person taking their life at 20. All this came from one decision nobody made: to be born. For Cioran, life is a debt we never agreed to, and refusing to accept that tragedy is a form of intellectual cowardice,
Optimism in his view is anesthesia, a denial of awareness. Most people live on autopilot, chasing goals, laughing at parties, pretending the abyss isn't right there waiting. But Shorin didn't tolerate that theater. He ripped off the mask and said, what we have is a forced existence, with a traumatic beginning and a guaranteed end. In this light, lucidity isn't a blessing, it's a punishment. But also, paradoxically, it's freedom. Shorin didn't preach despair, he preached a bitter kind of laughter in front of the absurd. Because when you stop expecting meaning, redemption, or fairness, you can no longer be deceived. Life goes on, but now you finally see it for what it is. You keep breathing, but you no longer expect the world to make sense. Society has tamed you. You think you're free, but you're a well-trained product. You studied what they told you to. You accepted rules without asking why. You adapted to the market. You learned to smile at work. You complained, but you still obeyed. Now you live tired, anxious, numbed by distractions, praying for weekends, repeating recycled phrases about balance. And when someone asks how life is going, you answer automatically, normal. That word normal is the real prison. Krishnamurti refused that trained mediocrity. He said without hesitation, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. The sickness isn't just in wars, inequality, or disasters. It's in the structure of everyday existence. A world where being functional matters more than being conscious. Where thinking differently is dangerous. Where feeling deeply is weakness. Where everything becomes a performance, career, affection, spirituality. From childhood, you were trained to obey. School, church, company, all fine-tuned instruments of conditioning. Subtle, effective, invisible. The system educates for submission, not intelligence. It teaches formulas, not discernment. It molds personalities, not human beings. Krishnamurti said the modern education system creates people who are adjusted to the absurd, and the result is what we see. A world full of broken adults pretending to be stable, medicated with antidepressants and pornography, searching for comfort in social media and self-help gurus trying to escape the quiet horror of a meaningless life. For Krishnamurti, the problem isn't suffering, it's our desperate refusal to face it, the endless urge to escape pain instead of understanding it. He didn't offer solutions, he destroyed all of them. He said that following any authority, political, spiritual, emotional, means being lost already. Every system that promises safety kidnaps your freedom, and the pain we feel comes from being torn away from the raw truth of direct experience. Krishnamurti spoke coldly, but with surgical clarity. He said truth is a pathless land, meaning there's no manual, no method, no external salvation. Freedom only exists when you question everything, radically, relentlessly. That's the real shock. You suffer because you live by standards that aren't yours. You desire what you were told to desire. You run from pain because they taught you that pain equals failure. You live the life they scripted for you, but that's not living, that's functioning. Krishnamurti proposed something simple yet revolutionary. Observe. Just observe. Watch your fear, your boredom, your anxiety, your impulses, without judging, without trying to fix them. Because in that clear, unfiltered observation, the mind starts to free itself. And then you see, the world isn't broken only out there, it's broken inside you, in the mental molds you accepted without noticing. The real madness isn't losing your mind, it's adapting perfectly to what's unbearable. Normality today is the most dangerous collective delusion. And as long as you keep trying to look fine, you'll keep breaking inside. The truth that burns all illusions is simple. You're going to die. No matter how much you distract yourself, achieve, or love, it all ends. And that silent fact shapes every choice you make, even when you don't see it.
Ernest Becker didn't waste time sugarcoating reality. In his book, The Denial of Death, he wrote, "Man is the animal that knows he will die, and yet tries to forget it." That's the silent contract of modern life. Everyone knows, but no one talks about it. The world runs on organized denial. Work, marriage, children, goals, vacations, TV marathons, social media smiles, all part of a giant choreography meant to distract us from the only certainty, that one day we'll disappear. Death is censored. We hide it behind polite words. Nobody says he died, they say he passed away. Funerals are rushed, terminal patients are hidden from view. Death has become obscene, not because it's rare, but because it reminds us that we're fragile, temporary, disposable. And yet that fear of vanishing is exactly what drives the world. Becker called this terror management.
Everything people do, build careers, chase fame, donate to charities, defend ideologies, is at its core an attempt to escape the terror of extinction. Religion, politics, legacy, they're all survival projects for the ego. We crave immortality, even if it's symbolic. That's why billionaires pay to have their names carved on buildings, why authors write books, why soldiers die for flags. It's not just love of cause, it's the desperate need to matter beyond the grave. Becker said it plainly, societies are immortality systems. They offer pre-packaged meanings to keep us from seeing the void. Be a good parent, a good citizen, a good worker, live for your family, build a name. It's all scaffolding built around a truth too unbearable to face head-on. The deepest existential crises always come when death shows up close. A car crash, a cancer diagnosis, the sudden loss of someone you love. That's when all the illusions dissolve. Your job, your status, your plans, they all crumble because you realize they were just elaborate distractions. Becker was merciless but precise. Humans drown themselves in culture because they can't handle their own fragility. And there's no easy escape from that, not even God. Becker didn't deny faith, but he showed how often it functions as a psychological crutch, a story we tell to make death sound less terrifying. Heaven, reincarnation, karma, sometimes they're not expressions of wisdom, but symptoms of panic. The promise of eternal life isn't always hope, it's fear dressed up as faith. Want proof of how desperate people are to escape death? Look at the modern obsession with longevity, cryonics, mind uploading, biohacking. Billionaires investing billions to delay the inevitable, as if death were a software bug that could be patched. They've conquered wealth, fame, comfort, but can't bear the thought of rotting in the ground. That's not enlightenment, that's technological despair. Neuroscience agrees with Becker. When the human brain is reminded of death, the regions linked to fear and ego light up in panic. The self begins to collapse. Death isn't just an end, it's the ultimate breakdown of the I. Becker's final blow was simple. Maturity means accepting death, not denying it. The denial of death is the engine of self-deception. That's why we numb ourselves. That's why we fill every silence with noise. That's why we choose comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. We'd rather live shallow than face the abyss. But real freedom begins the moment you stop running from it. When you look straight at death and don't flinch, life suddenly becomes real. You stop living for eternity and start living honestly. Because once you accept that you're going to die, you stop waiting to be saved. You stop needing to be important. You stop trying to win at a game that ends the same for everyone. The universe doesn't hate you, but it doesn't love you either. It simply doesn't care. That's the most unbearable, liberating truth of all. There's no plan, no cosmic justice, no higher purpose waiting behind the curtain. There's only chaos. Particles colliding, entropy rising, galaxies spinning towards nothing. Within that, you exist. Just a brief flicker of consciousness, trying to make sense of what has no sense. Ray Brashear, the philosopher of nihilism, doesn't try to cover that up. He says, the truth doesn't console, it cuts. And that's where philosophy should begin, not in comfort, but in confrontation. Nihilism isn't something to escape, it's something to endure with eyes open. There's no metaphysical safety net. The universe won't reward you for being good. Nature won't protect you because you meditate. The cosmos doesn't care about your tears or your prayers. But that's not hopelessness, it's clarity. Because when all illusions die, what's left is the raw, unfiltered reality of being. Brashear says, live the nihilism lucidly. Don't hide from it. Don't paint it with spirituality or sentimentality. Accept the silence of the universe. Accept that there's no reason. And then, see what remains. Because when everything falls away, what's left is something strange, maybe even sacred. Not in the religious sense, but in the sense of truth stripped naked. This is the beginning of real freedom, when you stop demanding that life comfort you, when you can exist without needing it to mean anything, when you can look at the void and not ask for it to smile back.
Brashear's nihilism wasn't a rejection of life, it was a demand for honesty. He believed that meaning isn't missing from the universe, it simply never existed to begin with. The universe is not cruel nor kind, it's indifferent. A cold, expanding field of decay where consciousness briefly flickers, asks why, and then goes silent. And yet that flicker, that capacity to question the void, is what makes existence both tragic and remarkable. Bresir's idea isn't to despair, but to strip away every comforting illusion until nothing remains but the truth itself. Because once you stop lying to yourself, once you stop expecting meaning, you can finally see reality for what it is, without distortion. In this, nihilism isn't death, it's rebirth through destruction. To live without illusion is the highest form of clarity. But the truth is harsh. Most people aren't built to handle it. We invent stories because stories make the chaos livable. We crave plots, heroes, redemption, reasons. We need to believe that all this pain means something, that our tears aren't wasted, that every loss has a purpose. But as the writer Philip Mainlander warned, this obsession with turning pain into meaning is itself a symptom of fear. He wrote that suffering is not a lesson, it's just suffering. It doesn't teach, it doesn't elevate, it doesn't lead to hidden wisdom. It just hurts. The idea that everything happens for a reason is humanity's favorite lie. It's how we cope with chaos. We try to build narratives out of random collapse. You lose someone you love, and people tell you it's a test or a message or part of God's plan. But sometimes there's no plan, sometimes you just lose. Mainlander said that our compulsion to find moral or spiritual lessons in tragedy is an act of denial, a refusal to accept that the universe doesn't owe us explanations. He insisted that we stop searching for meaning in suffering and instead look at it for what it is, the price of existing in a blind system that doesn't know we're here. You lost someone. There's no hidden lesson there. You failed despite doing everything right. There's no grand story behind it. You were abandoned when you needed help most. That wasn't fate, it was just what happened. The universe isn't a teacher, it doesn't reward effort or punish mistakes, it just moves. And we happen to be caught inside that movement. The physicists agree. Entropy always increases. The cosmos is expanding into darkness, growing colder, more chaotic, less ordered. Every structure will eventually break down. Every memory, every monument, every word will fade. There is no center, no mission, no final act. And yet, here comes the strange twist. Not having meaning doesn't mean giving up. Bresir argued that confronting nihilism doesn't paralyze us, it liberates us. Because when you no longer expect salvation, redemption, or cosmic justice, you're finally free to live without pretending. You can act, create, love, and exist for no reason other than that you can. That's the hidden strength inside the void. You live because you're alive, not because you were told to. You help someone because you choose to, not because it earns you heaven. You create because you want to leave a trace, even if you know it will vanish. Courage isn't denying the emptiness, it's looking right into it and walking forward anyway. To live in spite of absurdity, that's rebellion in its purest form. That's what Soren called the laughter of lucidity. When you stop asking the world to justify itself, you start existing in a raw, honest way. No grand illusion, no destiny, just you and the absurd face to face. And yet, that confrontation gives birth to something unexpected. When you accept the void fully, life stops being a prison. You stop being the victim of a rigged game and become an observer of it. You're no longer running from the pain, you're watching it. You see the cycle, desire, frustration, boredom, distraction. You understand it without needing to escape it. That's where peace begins, not the cheerful kind, but the quiet kind that comes from no longer lying to yourself. Because the moment you accept that there's no escape, paradoxically, you become free. Freedom isn't found in pleasure or hope, it's in clarity, in the calm that comes when the struggle to make sense finally ends. The truth is, nothing in the universe cares whether you exist, but that doesn't make your existence worthless. Meaning doesn't come from the outside, it's made from the inside. You can't change the absurdity of the world, but you can choose your response to it. You can face it with despair or with defiant calm. Maybe that's the final wisdom, to laugh even when the universe is silent, to keep walking even knowing the road leads nowhere, to live without illusion and still love the light that flickers before the dark.
Chekhov didn't write philosophies, he wrote people. And through them, he revealed a truth philosophers only hinted at, that life doesn't resolve, It just continues. In his stories, nothing truly changes. People love in silence, die in silence, and are forgotten in silence. There are no miracles, no grand awakenings, just small hopes that keep collapsing, small joys that fade before they're even felt. That was his realism, a wound that never heals but refuses to close. He didn't exaggerate or dramatize suffering, he just showed it for what it is: ordinary, constant, unremarkable. The tragedy wasn't in the violence of existence, but in its indifference. People keep going, not because they find meaning, but because stopping wouldn't help. That, to him, was the core of being human, the instinct to continue even when nothing makes sense anymore. Zakhar Prialepin added another layer to this: the brutality of history. In his stories about war and loss, pain isn't an accident, it's the foundation. In his Russia, suffering isn't exceptional, it's the normal state of life. Men bury their children, women are abandoned, soldiers go mad, and yet they all keep moving, because stopping is worse. In his world, resistance isn't heroic, it's survival. You don't rise above pain, you crawl through it. Prialepin doesn't glorify that, he exposes it, makes you look at it without flinching. He reminds you that strength is often just a quieter word for numbness. We endure because we must, not because it's noble. The human condition in his writing isn't about triumph, it's about persistence. People adapt, suffer, and adapt again. They forget, rebuild, repeat. The cycle is endless, and that's what makes it tragic, but also, somehow, beautiful. Because even in the middle of all that horror, someone still reaches out, still loves, still helps, even knowing it changes nothing. That tiny act, repeated through centuries of pain, is the closest thing we have to grace. And then there's Meinlander again, with his cruel precision. He said the world's movement is toward its own self-destruction, that life's deepest drive isn't to survive, but to end. Every organism, every star, every thought moves inevitably toward dissolution. In that sense, the will to live is secretly the will to die, to return to nothing, to peace. It's not morbid, he said. It's release. In his view, the universe is not evolving upward, but slowly exhaling, falling apart with quiet relief. Existence is an accident, correcting itself. And somehow, that perspective, as dark as it is, offers comfort. Because if the universe itself is dying, then your struggles aren't failures. They're just part of the same decay. You're not broken, you're dissolving, as everything is meant to. There's no shame in that, no guilt, only truth. Philip Meinlander, like Chorin and Schopenhauer, didn't ask you to love life blindly. He asked you to see it clearly, to stop trying to fix what was never whole, to stop expecting meaning from what was never designed to give it. That honesty might break you at first, but then it frees you. It gives you permission to live without illusion, to feel pain without needing it to teach you something. Because pain doesn't always teach. Sometimes it just exists. And that's enough. The universe isn't a classroom, and you're not a student meant to pass its tests. You're just here for a moment. The lesson is that there is no lesson. You can either fight that or accept it. Acceptance doesn't mean indifference. It means lucidity. It means knowing that when everything collapses, you'll still walk forward, not because it matters, but because it's the only thing left to do. That's what Chekhov, Prialepin, Meinlander, and all these thinkers share. The understanding that continuation itself is an act of defiance. Even when you know the end is guaranteed, even when every truth hurts, you keep moving. That motion, that flicker, is life, not because it leads somewhere, but because it refuses to stop. And maybe in that refusal, there's something sacred, a silent form of courage
that doesn't need hope to exist.
You've made it this far, and that alone means something. You've stared directly into the ideas most people spend their entire lives running from: suffering, meaninglessness, death, the unbearable weight of simply existing. Most people never go there because the truth doesn't comfort, it burns everything false. But if you're still here, it's because something in you recognizes this pain, carries it too, and maybe, just maybe, feels a strange kind of relief in hearing it spoken aloud. The final truth is simple and impossible. Life is meaningless, but that doesn't mean it's worthless. The universe doesn't care, but that doesn't mean you can't. Nothing guarantees purpose, but you can still create one. That's the paradox. The void doesn't disappear. You just learn to move inside it. Because when all illusions collapse, when you stop chasing after grand answers, what's left is what's real. The tiny, fragile moments that make up this absurd existence. The laugh you share with someone who understands you. The quiet morning light before the world wakes. The strange comfort of music that feels like memory. These things don't fix the void, they live beside it. They don't erase death, they make life bearable in its shadow. That's what it means to be lucid, not to escape the darkness, but to see clearly in it. You stop asking for salvation, you stop needing to be special, you stop waiting for life to start making sense. You simply live because you can, because you're here, because stopping wouldn't help. The philosophers didn't offer hope, they offered clarity. And sometimes clarity is the only redemption left. Schopenhauer taught us that desire is slavery. Ciron showed us that birth itself is the first wound. Krishnamurti revealed that adaptation to insanity is not health. Becker exposed our fear of death as the engine of civilization. Brassier reminded us that the universe doesn't care, and that's exactly why we must. Mainlander and Prilepin stripped life to its bones and still found in that nakedness a strange kind of beauty. Because once you see the truth, really see it, you can't go back. You can't unknow it, but you also can't be lied to anymore. No promise of paradise, no shiny ideology, no motivational quote will work again. You've seen behind the curtain. You know there's no script, no director, no safety net. Just you, standing in the middle of infinity, aware that everything ends, and doing it anyway. That's not despair. That's the start of freedom. The meaning of life isn't found, it's made in defiance of the void. It's not about cosmic purpose, it's about what you choose to do with the silence. You can curse it, or you can create inside it. You can cry, or you can laugh. You can surrender, or you can keep walking, even if every step leads nowhere, because walking itself becomes enough. Maybe that's what courage really is, not believing in happy endings, but facing the truth without collapsing. Knowing everything will fade and still saying, I'm here. The universe will forget you. Time will erase every word you've spoken, but right now, in this instant, you are alive, and that's already extraordinary. You are the universe noticing itself for a fraction of a second before it returns to nothing. That's not tragedy, that's existence. And maybe that's all the meaning we ever needed. So, if this hurt, good. If it made you uncomfortable, even better. Pain is proof that you're still conscious, that you haven't gone numb like the rest. And if you felt something here, something real, then it already mattered because truth, even when it hurts, connects us. You don't have to escape the void, you just have to stop pretending it isn't there. Accept it, sit with it, and then quietly keep going, because that's what we do. We continue, not because it's hopeful, but because it's honest. Thank you for walking through the darkness, for daring to listen when the world prefers noise, for standing in front of the abyss and not turning away. If this resonated, if you felt that strange pull of recognition, then you're not alone. You're part of a small group of people who choose awareness over illusion, who see the world as it is and still choose to feel, think, live, and that's enough. Support this space if you can, stay if you want, but above all, remain awake. Because in a world addicted to denial, your clarity is rebellion, your silence is resistance, your honesty is light, and that's what this is all about. If this journey through the dark meant something to you, if even for a moment you felt seen, shaken, or strangely at peace, remember that voices like this survive because of people like you. Every click, every share, every small gesture keeps this light from fading. You can keep Lumen Theory alive by pressing the thanks button, subscribing, and staying with us as we keep questioning, breaking illusions, and searching for fragments of truth in the chaos. Support the conversation that refuses to lie to you. Help the light endure, even when the world prefers the dark.